Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thank you so much for listening. Beyond Organic Wine has moved to Substack. Thank you so much to those of you who have already subscribed. It's incredibly encouraging. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. Also, we are looking for sponsors for the upcoming Embracing Hybrid Grapes in California conference on January 26, 2026 at UC Davis. It's going to be a lot of fun, and if you want to be part of this and associate your brand or your business with really the future of wine, please email us at embracinghybridgrapes@gmail.com. Tickets go on sale at the end of this month, September 25, so stay tuned. Okay, so if you listen to this podcast regularly, I wanted to give you an update on this 3D deer fence that I've been using. The update is that I found the top of a young persimmon tree that was inside the fence, munched, eaten from the top down, and it's less than a meter tall, so the chances that it's anything besides deer are scarce. And I've been as circumspect as possible about maintaining this fence. Just to give you the context, I've mowed regularly under both sets of wires. I've baited the fence with attractive smells like apple and peanut butter at least every 2 weeks. And generally, I just make sure that it's charged and operating at optimal voltage. Now, I only found one tree munched inside, and I'm not sure exactly what happened or why that happened, but if they got through the fence and munched that one tree, they'll do it again. I will definitely keep you posted, but my optimism about the fence has taken a nosedive. For context, I'm farming in an area with an active and cheeky population of lovely white-tailed deer. And as it turns out, unrelated to the deer fence, I also live amidst an active and cheeky population of, I can't even say their name without laughing and crying simultaneously, voles. Yes, I've already lost a handful of vines to the little nibblers. So I'm doing some mowing and enjoying the fact that the woods are filled with barred owls and great horned owls, and that a family of foxes has a den about 50 yards from the vines and trees. I thought I could wait until late fall to get all my vine and tree protection in place, but apparently the immense amount of greenery surrounding my vines couldn't slake their thirst for vine blood. It must be because hybrid grapevines are so incredibly delicious. At least that's my story. Unrelated to that, and with no segue again, I have a book recommendation. It may not sound like a wine book, but I really found a ton of inspiration for my winemaking in the book titled The Immortality Key, The Secret History of the Religion with No Name by Brian C. Murarescu. Maybe you've already read it. It was a bestseller. It was something that Sarah Hedges Goodhart mentioned in passing in the last episode that I published, and I followed up on it and checked it out, and then I couldn't stop listening to it and listened to it as fast as I could. The book reads like the Da Vinci Code, but it's nonfiction. It's a scholarly exploration of the through line of psychoactive substances in the fermented sacraments that might be the reason for Western civilization as we know it. And I won't go into it too deeply now, other than to say that I think my idea of wine has been incredibly limited by both commercial and cultural baggage, so that I've neglected to see one of the most obvious and historically important uses of wine is as a medium for medicinal and sacramental substances. So check out The Immortality Key. Now, the last episode was with a 110-acre biodynamic chateau in one of Washington State's famed AVAs. This episode features a 1-acre organic and regenerative vineyard of hybrids and vinifera with a straw bale winery and an underground house up in the northeast corner of Washington in an area that nobody thinks about in relation to wine. Well, at least nobody outside of that area. I point out this contrast, not to say that one is better than the other in either case, but because in our dominant culture, I've noticed that one is taken more seriously than the other. And I'm not saying that a 110-acre vineyard is really big, and I'm definitely not saying that it represents the same values as big wine. I just want to be clear about that. It's just bigger and different than the vineyard that we visit in this episode today. And I'm using this comparison to look at this thought that we need to be able to scale the ideas that our wine embodies, or they are dismissible and unimportant. This is a big area of critique of the small farm regenerative ag movement by people like Chris Newman of Sylvan Aqua Farms. He makes really important points, and he's definitely worth listening to. And there are definitely some challenges to consider. The issues that we face in regenerating our wine cultures and agriculture in general are unavoidably systemic, and the systems we live in are massive. But also, this world is just something that we've made up. It's all something that we just agree to believe in, and we could just change it. I also recently heard the question posed, what if we focus on spreading rather than scaling? Could we look at regenerative viticulture as a viral meme rather than as a business plan for 1 million acres of vineyards? Do we need or even want to scale when it comes to wine? Right now, it looks like the answer to that is no. Big wine, the kind that comes with a barcode and national distribution and isn't really wine anyway, but more like a wine-flavored beverage, seems to be what's losing the most sales right now. And my guest for this episode is doing just fine. He has a loyal customer base because he makes his wine for his community. He represents his community's highest values in his wine, even if they only care that it suits their taste and doesn't make them feel like the wines of big wine do. His neighbors can tell that he cares about them and the land that they live on. There's that story, maybe you've heard it, about the businessman who goes on vacation and charters a local fisherman to take him out fishing on his boat. And he has such a great time, and the fisherman is such a great host that the businessman's business mind starts working. And he says to the fisherman, he's like, look, you're so good at this. This is such a great, and I'm having such a great time. You could make so much money doing this. You could buy a few more boats and expand and hire some other fishermen to work for you. And, you could take out more people like me. You could advertise, where I come from, and I'll send my friends down, and pretty soon you could have a fleet of boats. And the fisherman's like, okay, great. And then what did I do? Well, then you'd franchise and you'd build that. And then you'd own the distribution. You'd set up a fishery. And anyway, the point of the story, you've probably heard it, is at the end of the day, at the end of this story, the fisherman's like, okay, but then what do I do? And the businessman's like, well, finally, once you've built this fishing boat empire, you can finally relax and, spend your days fishing on a boat. to which the fisherman replies, well, what do you think I'm doing? And the point being, sometimes you just have to realize that keeping it small, you already have everything you really want. My guest for this episode is Joe Barreca of Barreca Vineyards. Joe has been making wine for 50 years and lives in Northeast Washington State. Joe is a self-described back-to-the-land hippie, and in recent years, regional efforts to elevate the voices and perspectives of the native people of his region have exposed him to new perspectives that inform how he thinks about and lives on the land, and clearly inspire and move him. Over years of experimentation, he's come up with some of the most fascinating approaches to winemaking that I've heard since I spoke with Peter Schmidt of Mythopia in Switzerland. And what I think is fascinating is that out in this remote corner of a place that isn't usually thought of in relation to wine at all, by just following ecological values and a desire to make wine for his community, Joe has sort of stumbled into making 0-0 wines and orange wines and co-ferments like a ideological natty winemaker from the Loire Valley or San Francisco Bay Area. Joe grows one of his hybrid grapes, Baco Noir, with 10-foot canes, simply because he observed it and saw that that's what it needed and wanted. And that's the balance that it needed to have the appropriate light and air to optimize the grape development. He let a Baco vine grow into an old pear tree and has come to some really interesting observations to share about this partnership. And I'll share a photo of that on Substack. Joe had never heard the term married vine, but he said he could see how that made a lot of sense. Joe also washes and reuses all of his bottles. This is something he couldn't do without the relationship with his customers who know to bring the bottles back to him, as well as the small scale that makes this possible. While the rest of us are spinning our wheels trying to come up with regional bottle reuse programs and finding massive hurdles related to the inertia of habit and bureaucracy, as well as apathy, even among those of us who should care the most about it, Joe has meanwhile set up his own local reuse system made possible by community-scale winemaking and is actually doing it. So maybe we shouldn't dismiss small. Maybe small is beautiful. Enjoy. Welcome, Joe. I really appreciate you doing this. Thanks for coming on and having this conversation.
Oh yeah,
And how do you pronounce your name?
Barreca, pretty
Joe
much the way.
Barreca. Okay. And where are you?
I'm in south of Kettle Falls, so you probably heard of
Northeast Washington, right?
You've probably heard of Grand Coulee Dam.
I've heard of it.
Yes,
What
so
river does it dam?
the Columbia,
Oh, well, that's why I've heard of it. Okay.
right? Big river, big dam. It backs up Lake Roosevelt, 115 miles. So we're along the lake, though everybody calls it the river.
Got it. Yeah. I saw
But it,
that. I
it
saw
makes
that.
like right now, the temperature here is 90, but that's cooler than it is inland, away from the lake.
Gotcha. So it creates a little microclimate that is
Yeah,
a little milder.
in the spring it's cooler for longer, and in the fall it's warmer for longer.
Okay, nice.
Which is,
Okay.
but you
So it's
know,
sort of like what that's why wine is where I am here in the Finger Lakes for the same reason. It's about that,
right.
that little, the lake effect. Yeah.
But right now, I am surrounded by forest fires. There are
Oh,
huge fires going in every direction from here, ranging from a couple hundred acres to 6,000.
it's
So
that time of year.
it's
Yeah.
well, it's not always. I mean, the weather changes so much. Like this last winter, we had hardly any snow, and so
Uh,
we don't have much of a water table to start with, and it kind of screws up my
gotcha.
water a little bit. But
Gotcha.
the plants loved it. They just bloomed like crazy. The peaches, the apples, the cherries, everything just came on big time, and put out all of this fruit. And then we haven't had any rain for months, hardly. So the fruit is small, but it's getting ripe, and the grapes are
Uh,
the same way. That I have a lot of grapes that are not very big, but that should make
Interesting.
sense for some good wine, I think. Except
Well,
for people carry on about the smoke taint, but I haven't really found that to be a problem.
so, why not? Why do you think you haven't? It's blowing past. You're not too. It's not too heavy where you are, or what?
Uh, well, it would have to be kind of wet for starters for the
Uh,
ashes or smoke to stick onto the grapes,
okay.
and it's not wet at all. And I guess they would have to be. I have had wines that people could taste a little bit of smoke in,
Okay.
but they liked it. It's like,
So it's it's in balance smoke taint. Yeah. Yeah,
right.
I get that.
It's not like the end of the world that there's a
Mm.
little smoke on the wine.
Well,
And
it might be the end of the world, and it might just be a flavor that we need to get used to because it is the end of the world.
it is kind of the
I
end of
hate
the
to be
world.
dark.
So
um, well, so let me ask you a couple real quick questions. So, first of all, I want to locate you for anybody listening that you're northeast Washington State, so sort of the Idaho side of
right,
Washington State toward the Canadian border.
right.
Um, it starts to get mountainous there again. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
right? So you have the big sort of middle of Washington after the coastal range, and then the mountains start to rise up there. And
right. Yeah, in the
are
middle of
you at
all,
any elevation?
yeah, we're well right at the lake. It's like 1,400 feet.
Okay.
The mountains around us go up to 7,000 feet,
Okay.
and
Gotcha.
in the middle of the Columbia Basin, where the flood basalts are, it's a little bit higher elevation, but it doesn't really go up and down that much. It's pretty flat, and just a bunch of wheat fields mostly until you get
Right.
down to Yakima and Pasco and Walla Walla, and then those are big fruit and wine growing areas. We don't have nearly as long a growing season as those areas, so uh, a lot of us, I can name a dozen different wineries around here, or at least people growing grapes that are growing the French hybrid.
Okay. So it's a little hybrid pocket there in
Yeah, it is.
Washington.
That there was one of the first guys that moved up here was I guess his original name was Bart Alexander, and he started China Bin Winery, which is up much closer to the border. Maybe only less than 20 miles from,
Okay.
but it's right on Lake Roosevelt too. So,
Okay.
and the land is it's different in every place. Like his land is old riverbed that has a lot of rocks, but it also has a lot of soil built up. So it's not such a, it's well drained with some good soil.
Hmm.
Mine is what we call blow sand. So this this is this is stuff that you can put in a bucket like halfway full or so, fill up the bucket with water, and siphon out all the sand and water together. It's really
Oh,
light.
wow. Wow.
And then my neighbor down the road, he's got pretty much clay. So right behind where Grand Coulee Dam is now was the Columbia Ice Dam, just like they had the Missoula floods and that
Oh,
big
right.
ice dam there, that
Right.
also came through this area, generally speaking, but it it blocked everything, and then it melted over and over again, and so you have layers of the first thing to fall out is heavier sand and gravel. Then the next thing is lighter sand, and the next thing is clay. And since it
Mm,
repeated, you have layers of this stuff
got it.
along the river, along the lake here.
Got
And
it.
some places are clay, some places are rock. Some it just kind of
Huh.
depends on what bench you happen to be on.
So what can you describe your farm or your farming operation or whatever you're doing there?
All right, so this is not a big operation. This just me and my wife, and it mostly me. And we have 7 acres, but I'm only farming a little over 1 acre in grapes. So I have
Uh-huh.
500 or 600 plants,
Okay.
uh, and I only create maybe 100 or so cases of wine a year.
That's
So
nice.
it's not a big winery. It's basically a hobby that got out of hand, and
Yeah.
but it's still because I'm busy with a lot of other things. This is like supplement to my social security.
Got
But
it. Yeah.
the I also am a cartographer, and I helped implement all the enhanced 911 and emergency service maps in these counties and some in Idaho and Montana. And so I still make or print some maps. And I'm also president of the Heritage Network, which is an association of museums and historical societies in Northeast Washington and a little bit uh, outside areas from here. And
Okay.
that has a lot of responsibilities, particularly this year, because this is the 200th anniversary of the establishment of Hudson Bay Fort Colville, which
Okay.
was so. This is the white man cometh. This is the biggest cultural event in the history of the region. This is when fur traders first came out
Oh,
and
wow.
encountered natives, and you know did the whole colonization routine.
Got it.
And so for the 200th anniversary, we had 2 events already, and we're going to have a Fort Colville summit in another month and a half, where all these historians get together in a teleconference and also in person in a auditorium, and talk about their take on what the effects of Hudson Bay Fort Colville were on the area.
Well,
So
you're
we're close to a
near.
lot of Indian reservations, and
That's
learning a
exactly what I
lot
was
of,
just about to say. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, learning a lot of their perspective on things has just been the most educational thing that's happened to me in a long time. And I can go on and on about that, and do, especially if you ask my wife, she said, yeah, just cut him off. But
How does that
so,
inform your own, I mean, what you're doing or what your sensibilities are there with what you're doing? Has it
well,
informed that?
this summer, I mean, because for years for the last 5 years, ever since I kind of got on to regenerative ag and said, "Oh wow, this is cool stuff." I've been saying, well, the best thing I can do is tell other people about it, because nobody seemed to know what regen ag. In fact, people still have a hard time trying to. It's hard to define what regenerative.
Yeah,
At first.
that was my next question. What do you tell people?
Well, at first was like no till, don't spray anything, and plant cover crops, and a bunch of basic stuff. But life is a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And, I've been listening to John Kemp quite a bit. So I'll be going
Sure.
to,
Yeah.
he's having a big get together September 17th down in Othello, which is 3 hours away from here, but doable.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
but this stuff about sap testing and
Yeah.
the whole concept that pests only attack uh, plants that are already ailing for some other reason. It's just
Yeah.
the whole 180 from the whole commercial ag routine. And, it's starting to turn my vineyard around. And it's really what I want to concentrate most on because it's so exciting and important to, because it has effects not only on the soil and the productivity and health of the vines, but on your guts and the whole environment. Uh,
Yeah.
and it does
Yeah.
tie into. So a couple years ago, I went to the Earth Repair Conference in Port Townsend, which brought a bunch of big names like who is it? Lee, Andrew, Lou. There were a bunch of high-powered people here, but one of the things they did is they had as a follow-up a podcast. Well, it was a video actually by this woman Jeanette Armstrong, who is a Okanagan Silex Penticton band native, but she's also related to the whole line of salmon chiefs here.
Okay.
You're going, what the hell's a salmon chief? But uh,
It sounds like something
so
that should be there in Washington.
oh, it totally is because for at Kettle Falls, there's two places on the Columbia where there were waterfalls high enough to make the salmon have to leap up the falls, and
Right.
so that the natives could make these big baskets and put them in the waterfalls, and the salmon that didn't make it would fall back into the baskets.
Got it.
So at Kettle Falls, they had this thing set up for when the Chinook salmon, these are 50-pound salmon, or these are big puppies,
Right.
hogs,
Right.
they call them. And they would get literally tons of salmon in a day, like 1,700 fish, 50 pounds each.
Oof.
And then they would gather the 5 different or more tribes would gather around, and the salmon chief would determine one when to start fishing because they would let a certain amount of fish go upstream before they started catching any so that they would reproduce. They
Right.
were on to the necessity of maintaining the run. And then when they did catch them, he would divide up the salmon they caught between all the different tribes and all the different people because they would dry these things and pack them back home. And so for 5,000 years or more, uh, maybe as much as 11, these people were here living off of Kettle Falls. When they flooded Lake Roosevelt, it wiped out that fishery. Not
Yeah.
only did it wipe out the fishery because of the lake drowning it, but there was a design in the original Grand Coulee Dam for a fish ladder, but there was also an incentive to finish the dam early. And the contractor decided, well, one way to finish the dam early is to eliminate the fish ladder. Of course,
So
they
all
didn't
that
talk to any
migration.
native people, but
Wow.
that's what they
Wow.
did. And there went 11,000 years worth of history and sustenance for these natives.
Wow.
And so every year they hold on the solstice a salmon ceremony where they call the salmon back. And, believe me, they are jockeying like crazy to try and get the salmon back through government and legal means. But in this administration, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So, dealing with the whole history of this place, one of the things that the salmon chief line, we went up and listened. I listened to Jeanette Armstrong, who was in this line of salmon chiefs, and she had started a place up in Penticton called the Anaquan Center. And after I listened to her podcast or her video, she was talking about Temech, uh, and I would have it's it's spelled in the phonetic
Right.
alphabet sort of thing. So it's like TMIX and then a little W raised above the. Anyway, it's
Got it.
not
Yeah.
that intuitive to pronounce, but when she started talking about I couldn't figure out if this was a person or an ancestor or an ethic or a way of uh, creating a relationship with the earth, or, it was like totally the most important thing to these people. And I was like, I got to go see these people.
Mm.
And so I did finally, after years of wanting to do it, even though people in Canada were saying, oh, don't go across the border and come back. They'll take your phone. You know, it didn't turn out to be like that. But Canadians are kind of paranoid and they've stopped coming down here almost altogether. You've
Well, then maybe they
probably
have a right to
experienced
be
the same
paranoid
thing over
now. Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but sat down and talked with this guy, uh, Chad Anius, at this Inocuan Center for a few hours. And, that one of the things they say is everything comes from the land.
Hmm.
And I mean, this collision between the fur traders and the natives, it wasn't like they were totally the natives wanted knives and guns. They needed to defend themselves. They needed to make a living. They needed all this iron that England had blast furnaces since the 1700s. So the fur traders got here in the 1805 was Lewis and Clark, and then between that and Fort Colville, which was 1825, there were a lot more interaction.
Right.
And it gets messy. Uh, what all happened there.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's certainly not nice. But their whole perspective is like, okay, and I am going on about a rap that doesn't have very much to do with grapes right now. And if you want to cut me off, uh,
Well, wait. I mean, the Uber question was how it impacts what you're doing there, and so maybe it does relate. I don't know.
it does in that
What?
what I came away with is this perspective that we are the land, but
Mm,
every breath you take has come out of the plants and animals and microbes, whatever is around you. We're all saturated with the same uh, nutrients. You look at your body, it is 96% elements that came out of the air: water,
hmm.
carbon dioxide, nitrogen, all of these things that make up proteins and cells and the stuff that in our body came out of the air. Might have gone into plants first, might have gone into animals first, but it's in our bodies now, and it all came from the land. It came for not just any land; it came from this land. Uh,
Yeah.
and so,
I mean, unless you're eating
it,
bananas, then they probably came from a different land. But
yeah,
that's a
and
joke. That's just a joke.
well, yeah, but
I
one of the things that this guy was kind of drilling into me, and believe me, I could have talked for hours. Was like, so I had made this comment that I think we are mostly made out of stuff from the air, and he said, and then he pointed to these black cottonwoods that were nearby. He says, yeah, and that air came out of these trees here and these plants and stuff that are around here. So it's
hmm.
not like, we think of ourselves as individuals that are divided in a way, and in a lot of ways, we take water as being an element or something you can put in a bottle. But he says, no, this water that's on this land came from these ravines and these hills that feed down into this lake here, and keeps all of the animals and plants and people in this spot alive. This is sacred water. This is not water that you buy in a bottle, or you ship someplace, or you put in a canal. And we on I could go on about that, but this concept of we are the land has been very revolutionary.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, through that magic of, I mean, the plants, right? Like the photosynthesis creates that food that we end up eating. And then they also are creating the air that we're breathing in that we turn into energy as
right.
well.
And
That
so,
helps us process the food that they gave us.
right.
It's yeah.
But more than that, uh, when you talk to native guys around here, like the Snakes is the localist tribe, and they will say, on their logo it says, "We are still here." Well, when I say I'm still here, I mean I'm still alive. I'm still on the earth. I'm still breathing,
Right.
kicking here. But when they say we're still here, no, they mean not only are we still here, we are still here. We're not some other place. We're not just on the earth. We're in this place on the earth. And then
Mm,
when you look at it from what I was just talking about, they are not just here. They are here. They are this place.
right.
And so when you become this place, then you have a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah. That's really well said and
Uh,
beautiful. I've made some jokes, but I am with you 100% and then some.
so I'm here. I've made what I would consider mistakes. Like to expand my vineyard uh, in 2004. So I've been growing grapes here for like 30 years,
Hmm.
and I had this area logged where the trees were shading out my vineyard, and I said, "Oh, I'll just log the place and I'll get some more light." And then I had them, they took away most of the tree parts, but there was a lot of stuff left over in big slash piles, and I had them burn that. If I was going to do it over again, I'd have them bury it. It would be a big advantage. That'd be Kugel
Yeah.
forestry.
Yeah.
It'd be a whole way of maintaining the fertility and the organic matter and the carbon in the ground. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I wasn't into that then, and I regret it now. And so now I have this blow sand and I have water like at 120. That's about how far the lake is below my property, and that's
Got
kind of
it.
where the water table is. Though the water is not coming out of the lake, the water in the lake. If you look at this place geologically, we're in the second largest lead, zinc, and silver mining area on the continent.
Oh.
And right over the border on the Columbia River is Tecumseh, the biggest lead smelter in the world.
Oh boy.
Uh, and so there is a lot of heavy metal pollution in the lake. Uh,
Wow.
and there's a lot to be concerned about, in the water. We have every kind of mineral you can think of here. We have tungsten, we have uranium, we have copper, we have iron, we have lead, zinc, and silver. You name it, it's here. This is a really complicated, maybe the most complicated geologic area on the continent.
Wow.
And so there's a lot to be gained from that, but there's things to worry about too.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, if so,
So
China
what's
Ben
a
and these guys up here brought in all of these hybrid grapes, and then some other friends brought in some Frontenac, and other people brought in Marquette, and so uh, people have been mostly growing. I mostly grow uh, three varieties that were developed by Eugene Coleman in the Alsace-Lorraine region between France and Germany.
uh-huh.
So it's a
Which are
higher
those?
elevation, and they wanted their grapes to get ripe sooner, and that's wonderful for us because we are not Walla Walla. We don't have the degree days that they do have down there, and so it's
What
nice
are
that these things.
those?
Hmm?
What are those grapes that are from that region, from the Alsace region?
Well, Lucy Coleman. See, so
Lucy
Eugene
Coleman, that's
Coleman.
right.
He named Lucy Coleman after his wife. He named Leon Mio after a winemaker friend of his. And he named Marechal Foch after Marshal Foch that saved that region from the Germans in the First World War. The Marechal Line, the beginning of trench warfare and all of that.
Hmm.
Uh, and so that particular grape is got huge body and huge color and is the most commonly grown grape in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I hear
so
it makes good wine.
yeah, it's got a lot going for it. It's also, I compare it to corn. Corn needs good soil. It needs a lot of stuff,
Ah.
and so if you plant it in blow sand, it's having a hard time. And so even though I like Marichal Foch, I like Lucy because it does great here, and I
Oh,
really like
really? I was
Fox
going to ask.
Noir.
It does what?
I really like Lucy because it grows well here.
Okay.
So my
And
biggest volume is from Lucy Coleman.
What kind of grape is that?
It's a red wine grape.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, if I was to characterize them, uh, Lucy is a fairly early ripening red grape. It's got good color and good flavor. Uh, I make most of my wine out of it, uh, and we have fun with it. We tell our customers, yeah, people love Lucy, but
It's got a great name. I mean, and
yeah,
I don't
yeah, right.
know.
Leon Mio it gets ripe a little sooner than Lucy Coleman, and it can develop a lot more sugar. Like I brought in uh, Leon Mio at 30 bricks,
Wow.
uh,
Do
and
you do any alterations to that? Did you water that back?
no,
Oh, really?
you would be surprised how many people walk into my booth at the farmers market and say, "Okay, what's your sweetest wine?" And I go, "Yeah, Leon Mio. Here it is." Uh, it's
Yeah, no
I
doubt.
mean, people are not wine snobs. A lot
Right,
of
right.
people, I also have like apple wine and pear wine and huckleberry wine out there, and people just as soon have that as that they'd have something they never heard of in some kind of, if I say, yeah, this is a lot like Pinot Gris, they're going, yeah, what the hell is that? The average people really are not that sophisticated about wine.
Well, or yeah, I mean, sophisticated might I might push back on the use of that word because I feel like that's adding a value to having that knowledge, but it's like they like the stuff that they like, and Pinot
Right.
Gris is yeah, it's like, but um, you have so you also so in addition to those three that you mentioned,
The Baco
what other
Noir is like I tell people, this is the happiest grape in my vineyard.
Baco
Baco,
Noir, and you're growing it in sand,
Baco will put out a 20-foot cane in a year.
in sand.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
when we were talking about married grapes,
Yeah.
I had a Baco. I think it came up from seed. I think it was a sport, but
Okay.
it grew up, and I just left it there, and it was next to this pear tree that had kind of a vole had eaten around the pear tree, and it came up from its rootstock. So the pears were itty bitty and not very. So the pear tree was not doing great. It's probably 12, 13 feet high, with a lot of dead limbs, and
Okay.
you know, this Baco put a cane out that went into the bottom of that pear tree.
Yeah.
And the next year, it put a couple canes that went to the top of that pear tree. And the
Right.
next year, it put a couple more canes out that went over the sides of the pear tree back almost to the ground.
Right. Right.
And those canes are loaded with grapes. Those
Wow.
canes are super happy. That's what that plant wants to do.
Yeah.
So uh, most of those went to the birds.
Right. That's the only problem. It's
That's the problem, and
hard to
I have
protect a
I
married
have
vine.
bird nets over all of my grapes right now.
Yeah.
I feel bad about it. Lots of
Yeah.
birds have died in my nets, and
Yeah.
I'm going to stop. There aren't any birds left. There aren't any insects left. And
Yeah.
we've got a very heavily impacted biome here, and people are, they're not
Yeah.
missing the insects, but I am.
Yeah.
The mosquitoes, the bees, the grasshopper, anything, all that stuff that feeds the birds. And
Yeah.
you know, I hate to see the whole thing kind of go downhill.
I wrote
So I'll probably stop putting bird nets out. The
well, there are
ones we had the most problem with were they were a songbird.
not a starling.
No, starlings haven't affected it. The worst though are robins.
Oh,
Because
yeah?
in this time of year, robins flock up. You can have like
Yeah.
100 robins coming down the river, and then my vineyard is surrounded by trees, and like
Right.
this is perfect. Trees to hide out in, grapes to eat. Yeah, we're here, and
Yeah.
so robins they can just come out of nowhere and wipe out whatever's left. Luckily, they usually come late.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. The only solution I've heard to this problem without using nets was just like the ingenious thing that most of the birds, if you have late ripening grapes, that they will get ripe after the birds migrate south. And I think it only happens in certain areas where you can actually do that, and it makes sense, or maybe higher elevations where the birds leave earlier, kind of thing, because the frost comes earlier, the cold comes earlier. But um, yeah, of all the benefits, this is a big issue. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to do this, and I'm thinking a lot about how I can do this. I mean, there are plenty of now things that you could try, like there's distress calls, bird distress calls that does seem to work to some degree, but the
Yeah, my
birds, of
neighbor does
course,
that.
yeah,
Uh,
and it does seem to work. And like, I mean, the birds kind of get used to it, but they still kind of stay away from the speakers. So if you put enough speakers around, it definitely gives you some grapes.
yeah,
And
they
then
figure it out after a while, or you put
they
the fish
do,
fowl out there, and they figure that out after a while,
yeah, the
or
flying kite, like the hawk
right,
kite,
oh,
that
right,
works for a
or
while.
the propane cannons that go off every once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's annoying. I don't like those.
yeah, that is
I
totally annoying.
found birds dead from those too because they happened to be in front of the cannon when it fired
Oh
off.
my. So
Um,
yeah, so
yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh hell, my favorite bird is this pileated woodpecker that's been coming here
Oh
every
yeah.
fall. He's not here during the summer, but the grapes are ripe. The pileated's back, and he's really just a character, squawking out of the woods. Quack, 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 quack. It's not like he's hiding anything. But then he gets into the vineyard, and then he'll land on a pole, a part of the trellising system, and
Yeah.
look around. Oh yeah, just a woodpecker eating on the pecking on the pole. Then he leans over and eats some of the grapes, like surreptitiously.
I need some energy to hit
Right.
this pole.
So,
Yeah,
but it doesn't really do any damage.
that's funny.
So I love my pileated woodpecker, and I'm glad he's still here.
Well, I mean, and I say this because I really do. I mean, you mentioned cutting down these trees and feeling like regretting that you didn't do something with them, or I don't know, maybe even regret cutting them down as much, but maybe you need the space. But I recently visited a friend. I wanted to tell this little story because this was like such like an eye-opening example to me. So he's growing chestnut trees, American chestnut trees from seed as an attempt to restore the genome. He's growing a bunch of trees. Anyway, he's got a small farm, so very little open space and surrounded by woods. So a lot of his plantings are what he's doing is planting at the foot of trees, like at the forest edge, up against much bigger trees in the shade of them, at least partial shade, like one, like multiple sides are shaded, maybe gets one exposure that's got sun. Um, and all of and there's mid-story growth too. It's not just like an an upper canopy. There's like there's like a riot of forest edge plants and stuff like that he's planting in. And then he also has a meadow, and he has planted trees out in the meadow in rows, like you would, like an orchard. The trees in the meadow are doing worse than the trees that are getting less sun and are competing, quote unquote, competing with that whole forest edge community. And it was just stark everywhere you looked. Like all of the ones that he's planting along edges are doing way better planted at the same time. I mean, he doesn't do anything, so I can say he treats them the same. Once he plants them, he just lets them figure it out. And absolutely, like the ones at the forest edge were greener, lusher, taller, healthier looking. The ones in the field, shorter, sparser, yellower leaves, all the things that just show that they're alive, they're doing okay, but they're
Well,
not
yeah.
thriving,
So
you know?
why was it a meadow? It was a meadow because the trees weren't doing too good out there, and the grass.
I think I mean I think the meadow was just a cleared area, like it's becoming a forest slowly, but I don't think it's like they poisoned the earth or salted the earth or anything to make the meadow. I think it's
No, but
just
the most fertile ground really is in the meadows where the grasses go down, and they have much deeper roots than everything, pretty much,
mm.
and they rot down there, and like
So you think it might be like there might actually be an issue with that meadow is what you're thinking? It's not
no,
just the
meadow is probably just fine. It's just a meadow being a meadow, and it's not a forest being a forest.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I grow, I clone uh, all of my plant. I have 37 or 34 at least varieties of grapes on my place
Wow.
because I cloned and started all the ones that I have. I didn't buy plants. I just got cuttings and started them. Uh,
Okay.
and then I thought to myself, wow, I can do this. Maybe other people want some plants. So I started doing that. And, at first they were like, well, what kind of plants are these? Oh, these are great grape, wine plants. And they're, oh, yeah, we want seedless grapes. So
Right,
I
right.
went out and got some seedless grapes and I clone those for most people. I have like a whole row or so of hemorrhoid.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Hemorrhoids are they're really early, and they might have an
That's one
issue
of the
with
Munson varieties, right?
they shatter if you let them on the. But I don't leave them on the vine that long, and they make great raisins. I also have like black manuka, but it's a heavy feeder again, so it doesn't do as well. Canadized, so I have a lot of seedless table grapes that grow here too. But
Huh.
what I was going to say about forest is that all of these hybrids, especially, I mean, you think about their native life cycle. The birds eat the grapes at the top of the trees. They poop them around, and then the grapes start up underneath the trees in kind of a shaded area.
Yeah.
And they develop there, and when they get strong, they climb up the trees as soon as they can. That's why that one climbed up my pear tree, and I have another one that climbed up in. They really like going up.
Yeah.
Uh, but when they're young, they don't like that much sunshine. So
Hmm.
I put them in 2-gallon pots, and I put them in kind of a partially sunny shaded area where, because in a pot they're gonna the pots are all black. They'll get hot. They'll dry out really
Right.
quickly. And
Right.
for a while I had them in like a greenhouse, and that was dumb because it freezes in the winter and I can't get any water out to the greenhouse. Whereas if I have them outside, it snows on them and they're just fine. Uh,
Right. That's
so,
funny.
so they're all outside under, and I would let them go like 1 or 2 years before I sell them to people. But
Huh.
just an example of thinking like these grapes. Sure, the vinifera were raised from cuttings too, but they were raised in Europe where they were on trellises and vineyards right away. Whereas these guys would just as soon be at the bottom of an oak tree, climb to the top, have the birds eat them, and be spread around. That's their way of being.
Yeah, that's a
So
great
when my
observation.
Baco Noir puts out a 20-foot cane, I used to cut it back. I want to keep it on the cordon just to have
Right.
and wasn't happy with that way. But
Yeah.
now, after watching it on my pear tree, like, oh, it likes long canes. So now I
Yeah.
instead of doing spur pruning, I do cane pruning, and I'll put 10 or so feet of cane up at the top of the trellis, and it just
Wow.
saturates that with new fruit. So
Right. It loves, yeah.
they
It
like
wants
the,
to,
when people ask me, well, how do you trellis these things? I say air and light. They like air, they like light. If you
yeah.
bunch them up together, then you're going to invite insects, and things are not going to get ripe as soon.
Right.
So you can pretty much do anything with these plants if you give them plenty of air and light.
Right. Yeah. It's just, yeah, that's the problem you have to solve. Like what is the best way, yeah, to
So
do
your
that?
marriage thing, they're totally happy. I can't really see this happening, except that it'd be hell to pick them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and that's part of it is like I'm trying a couple different styles to keep them low, trying a couple different techniques, as well as just pruning the trees, to keep them in check basically, so they don't go out of a reasonable height. Um, you made me think of something when you were talking about regenerative agriculture and thinking about how when an insect attacks a plant, it's already sick. Like they know that they're reading the signals that we don't have any sense of. And this is kind of related, but this idea of like I don't I spraying. I think about. Do you spray your vines? Do you have to spray the hybrids?
And I used to spray a whole variety of organic sprays, organic pesticides. I mean, it was like an oxymoron. I Now I spray foliar sprays. I've got this formula that I think came from Nicole Masters. It's got fish fertilizer and things for calcium and kelp and
Right.
solubar for boron. It's got a host of things in there. Oh man, the vines just love that stuff. I spray that
Huh.
there in spring, and the leaf hoppers are gone, and they're cranking out the leaves and stuff.
Do you know the name of it? Do you want to say the
It's a
name of it?
formula. It's not a product.
Oh, it's like you make it yourself. You
I
put it
have to put it together myself.
together. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
well maybe
that's one of
you
the
can
weird.
share that with me and I can post it with the
Okay,
episode.
yeah, because a guy shared it with me. I have like a consultant guy that I'm talking to, though he's not like an expert on grapes. He actually herds goats, and
Ha.
so he rents out goats to people and clears areas to make them more fireproof.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
that's a
he's into the regenerative stuff, and he'd actually studied under Nicole Mapp, and Kempf has a lot of products that advancing eco agriculture that are
yeah.
going to do very similar things, and they're much more sophisticated about the approach, and I can see it. I do you know much about Korean natural farming?
I mean, I haven't studied it. I know about it and I know a few things enough to be dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. But
But
why? Do you know?
well, I've read some stuff and gone to some demonstrations and things like that.
Okay.
Uh, and the it strikes me that there's a lot of stuff that people could cook up on their own. Like I make
Yeah.
biochar,
Right.
uh, and
Me too.
the what I've discovered pretty much is, I've written articles and I've done demonstrations, and okay, so and I got a special big thing to make batches of biochar for myself. And what people learn is not how to make biochar. They learn Joe makes biochar. We can get some from him. You know, and what people learn from Kempf is, oh, Kempf makes foliar sprays. We can get some from him.
Right.
I
Right.
think that's kind of the way people are. That sure, there's lots of stuff you can do in the way of Korean natural farming, making little clay balls, these biology in them, and spreading them in the water and making it pure. And, you can do lots of stuff, or just putting sea salt in the water is a big start.
Mm.
Another spray I make is we keep all our eggshells now,
Yeah.
and uh, since it's a hot climate, I put them in a tray outside in a dry place, and the shells dry out, and then you kind of crunch them up and put them in a big jar and fill it up with vinegar, and it bubbles like crazy. Of course, the acid is breaking down the alkaline for a few weeks, and then when it stops, you have vinegar that doesn't smell like vinegar anymore. The acid is neutralized, but it's full of calcium,
Huh.
and calcium is a real big uh, strengthener of cell walls, which makes the plants much more impervious to insect attack. So,
Right.
that makes a calcium spray I can put on stuff, and it really don't need much. I mean, the formula is like a teaspoon per gallon. Well, that's kind of
Right.
so
Right.
I think it really should use more than that. Or you can take some kinds of what is that, folic acid, something like that, and put different salts of key minerals in with that, and it will meld together and make a spray that has all of these, magnesium and boron and calcium and stuff that the plants need, which will be a lot like stuff that Kemp will make for to sell to people to spray on their plants. If I'm a big farmer, I mean I can really see it. I'm gonna buy stuff from him, and I got it. I'm ready to go, and I don't have to mess around figuring out how to make this stuff and get equipment to make it. It makes a lot of sense to sell those kind of supplements instead of going hardcore, old fashioned, Korean natural farming, make all this stuff yourself kind of. So
Yeah.
that's actual real capitalism, and you have to keep in mind how capitalism works. Capitalism works like monopoly. You just keep you control everything. You control the distribution, you control the manufacturer, and you control the price, and then you control the market, and you make the maximum amount of money.
Right.
And so, that's not necessarily a great thing, but it is kind of the way people work.
Huh.
So there's some kind of middle ground in there, I think, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure exactly what it is.
it yeah, I feel like it's the way some people work, right? I mean, it seems like we have examples to the contrary out there.
All right.
But
I'm out making aerobic compost tea and putting it into my biochar and running it through my shredder and putting it
are
into
you
my compost and stuff.
so yeah, I mean, what are your okay, so here's my question for you. What are some of the most important things to you in the winemaking that you do or the wine growing that you do? I mean, that we haven't talked about already.
I use natural yeast.
Okay.
So, in a few days, my neighbor has a crop of Frontenac. That's another hybrid. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, I'm growing two of the Frontenacs here
Frontenac
where I
is a
am.
real animal. Like last Sunday, I started measuring the bricks in my grapes, and I have like a lot of columns, for
Yeah.
a lot of different rows. Frontenac is, I'm waiting for this stuff to get up there. I kind of like when the bricks reads 24, 25, then I'm starting to I'm wanting that must at that bricks. But when I start measuring and then I'm getting readings all the way from 15 to 22 or so, depending on the varieties. And Frontenac is up there at 28 already. It's so far ahead of the other grapes, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
So I will go out and I'm going to harvest a bunch of Frontenac, and then I'll crush it up and I'll keep it in a covered, warm place for a few days, and it will start to ferment on its own.
Right.
And so instead of having, a big cauldron of 500 gallons or something of crushed grapes, that I want to start with a packet of super fast GMO yeast, I will take a couple gallons of this already working Frontenac and throw it in there, and boom, the next morning I've got a head and I got seeds, and I got to be pressing it down. It kicks it and it's going.
Yeah.
So and if you think about it, the natural yeast, this is a biology that has been with this grape for thousands of years. Why are you buying something that they say is going to give you more body and more aromatic stuff? And just let the plant do what it does. So, uh, you know, I also like an important thing they have, since I don't add any sulfites, I don't add anything.
Okay.
Is that I used a winery up the line, because we were both, he had kind of overcome this problem. He said, no, you need a malolactic fermentation. And so I bought some, comes in a refrigerated bag and all this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, what is this stuff? It's malolactic. It's something that works much longer than the natural yeast. So I started just taking my batches of wine that work longer than the rest of them, we're talking years here,
Uh-huh.
and I add that into the new batch of wine. So
Huh.
it's been inoculated with the biology it needs to eat up whatever it needs to eat up to finish working. And so I don't buy that either. So I'm just using natural yeast and this malolactic inoculation, if that's what you want to call it, from the longest working wine that I've just bottled.
So that's really fascinating. I mean, how long have you been doing things this way?
Well, I've been making, like I said, wine for 50 years, and I've been here for 30 years.
And you've
Uh,
done it that way that you're talking about,
no,
not
no,
adding anything?
I was buying yeast up until 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
And And then, I got down on GMO stuff, and
Okay.
I started contacting yeast manufacturers, and I said, "So is this GMO or not?" They wouldn't talk to me. They don't want your questions. That this is all super secret stuff. Like when I'm at the farmers market, I give these people a card that says not only is there sulfites in the wine you typically buy in a commercial wine, there are 76 other things they can put into wine without telling you about. You
Yep.
can't do that with any other food. This is a huge industry-wide, brick wall they put up.
Yeah.
We're making wine now that doesn't have a vintage. It has a brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want it to come
Exactly.
out the same every year. So,
Right.
uh, it, you know, yeah, I'm going to buy bin 44, whatever, the standard thing is that comes out that some winemaker has made exactly the same flavor come out every year for the last 20 years.
Right.
And to me, that's not who or what I want to be.
Yeah.
So my wines have a vintage. They're not the same every year. Sometimes if I don't get the sugars I want, I'll make a rosé or a blush or something.
Yeah.
And I will combine them, and I'll do a field blend if I want. So I
Are you
just
doing?
don't have a brand. I just have vintages, and but it's all natural. And people come back to me because, Joe, I've been drinking your wine here, and I used to get headaches and stomach aches, and wine would screw me up, and your wine doesn't screw me up. And so I have a customer base of people that are healthy and happy. Um, I'm just, I'm fine with that. I'm only making 100 or more cases a year. I'm not shipping them over to Minnesota or Texas or someplace or god awful
Right.
send it to Europe or China. I don't have to kill it. I just make it, and when it stops working, I sell it.
Yeah.
And I sell it to
Yeah.
the people here that are part of my biome. You know.
Yeah. 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 Are you focused mainly on reds, or do you have white grapes as
I have
well?
whites. We have
Okay.
this cool white, this organic vineyard up the road from me, who is actually the guy that turned me on to your podcast the other day.
Okay.
Said, Joe, yeah, you might want to listen to this. And he grows Segreba. It's a
Okay.
Genuine white wine. And I also have Riesling. I have Okanagan Riesling. It gets ripe a little sooner.
Okay.
And I have Gewürztraminer, which is a really awesome wine. So those are my
Yeah.
whites, unless you start counting apple and pear and stuff. But
Mm. I mean,
the
I do.
right. So those are my white wines, and I also, I kick myself once in a while and say, people drink a lot of white wine, Joe. If you were trying to map this out in the beginning, you wouldn't have planted so many reds. You would have had a little more whites, but uh, I'm okay with that. Uh, my whole routine is, it's sort of an experimental place. I got 34 different kinds of grapes. How many? I make wine in carboys. I don't make wine in barrels.
Right. Right. Well,
My
with
wine,
100 cases, you
my
could
wife
do.
used to hate the oak flavor of wine, and so
Mm,
I never made wine with an oak flavor in it. Once in a while
yeah.
now, for a Marichal Foch or certain things, I like to put some oak chips in there. It makes a difference. That is kind of a cool thing. But I just can't afford the climate controlled, hugely expensive French oak,
Mm,
whatever kind of barrels. And one of my first jobs at a winery was John Lake's Columbia Vineyard. Anyway, my job was putting the sulfur dioxide into the tops of the barrels
right. Right.
because they would breathe out a certain amount, so you had an air gap in there, and you had to put in, what a god awful job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's amazing.
so yeah, I'm really not a keen. Oh yeah, the only way to make it is with all these oak barrels. And that's right up with the whole vinifera gospel in my book.
Yeah. Yep. What is your biggest production? Like what is your yeah, what one do you grow the most of and make the most wine of?
Bialusi Coleman.
Okay.
And
Fun.
Baco Noir is right behind that. Uh, and I kind of wish I had more Leon Mio. But I
What kind
like
of
them
are?
all, I,
Yeah, I know.
I
Do you
wish I had more of all of these things.
what style of trellising are you using? Are you using different styles depending, or do you use a top
Oh,
wire cordon or?
yeah. So at about 16, 18 inches, I have a wire for my watering system.
Okay.
So I have a half-inch poly pipe with emitters that spin the water out 3 or 4 feet on a side.
Oh,
So I'm
that's
watering
nice.
the whole row. I have the rows 10 feet apart. And then I have my cord on at like 42 inches. And, when I sell a plant to somebody, I say, look, whatever you do, force this guy up to the cordon. Force it up to 42 inches as soon as you can, because if you don't do that, there's going to be a late frost that's on the ground and it's going to kill the plant and it's going to set
Right.
you back and you're not going to get any grapes. So, the 42
Yep.
inch cordon, I'm pretty much dynamite about that. And then I had a couple wires, 48 or 9 on either side of the cordon where I was draping the canes over those, and then I
Right.
had a top wire that went over at the 6 or 7 foot level, uh, just to drape the bird nets on. But
Right.
now with a lot of these hybrids, I'm tying the long canes to that top wire. It's going to be a little
Oh,
weird for short people to pick, but the grapes like it.
what do you mean? What do you? So they go up and then do they flop down after you tie them up, or what? What do they do at
No,
that
I
point?
tie them along the wire.
Oh, along the wire, and they like being higher up.
They like being higher up, so I'll have a 10 foot or
So
more section of cane that is putting out grape every node knows
and
it.
does that many? So that's a lot of production per vine, right? Do you
That's
notice
kind of a lot of
like
production per vine. I mean, it's more production than I was getting before. And yeah, I like this,
did
and that's what I saw happening with that Baco that I let grow up into the pear tree.
did you notice a change in the chemistry of the grapes when you started producing more per vine? Like, are they ripening in the same way? Are they higher
They
acid? Are
ripen
they lower
sooner.
acid?
They get more sun. They get more
Huh.
light. They get more air. Hey, air
Yeah.
and light. That's what I'm telling people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean just going from like, I mean, look, and I'm sort of asking because I know that there are these beliefs out there that sort of like, you know, I don't know. But just like a lower production thing, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're going to get better chemistry." It's, whatever. Like it's
but,
all I mean,
but there's a definite difference. I don't
there
do
is a
that
difference.
for my Gewürztraminer. I don't do that for the Pinot Noir. Those
Okay.
those are vinifera. They want to that cordon. They want to go,
Yeah.
spur pruning. They want to come out of the same place every year, and they're going to put out a 6 foot cane or more or so, and it's going to drape over those 2 wires on the side, and they're happy as a clam. But
Right.
the hybrids, they want as much room as you can give them.
Are there any that are lower vigor? Like are any of the hybrids
Oh yeah, so I'm thinking,
more like vinifera?
yeah, the Bacos are really
It's the
vigorous.
extreme, yeah.
Right. I read somewhere that, a caution about Bacchus. Don't let them have too much water.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really
yeah.
like water. So, and there's no problem with not too much water on my place. I have 10 gallons a minute for an acre or so. That's really just not. Uh, so uh, the, that's not an issue. And they do okay. I think, I, have you heard of Field Lark AI?
No, I haven't.
All right, so John Camp and his gang has been advising people on regenerative ag and doing all of this sap testing and soil testing and believing that it's the fertility and health of the vine that keeps the pests away, and just revolutionizing farm after farm. For they have millions of acres under their guidance now, and they've been around for 10 or 12 years. They put all of this information they had into an AI that's exclusive to their information. And
Ah, boy.
it's a free thing that you can ask it questions. So, you
Yeah.
know, uh, I just wrote an article about farming with AI,
Yeah.
and I compared, and then I did the same thing. I subscribed to Grok. That's another AI. I don't know
Oh
if you're
yeah.
I'd
Yep.
say so. I asked the same questions of Grok and of Fieldlark AI, and Grok gave me all the standard, you know, kill the, So I said I had a problem with leafhoppers, and it gave me all these ways to kill leafhoppers.
Right.
Whereas camps give me, well, you're short on these minerals and you should be spraying this stuff fairly regularly, and then you can probably use enhancing the soil this way. And it gave me like 10 or so, I mean, 6 different categories and references to why they thought I should be doing that, and a whole farming plan by just putting in a few simple questions. I mean, answering a few simple questions about what my uh, sap bricks was, and my pH in the bricks, what in the sap was, and what my soil is like, and what kind of problems they have, and what varieties they have. So I gave us
Yep.
and it just spit out this plan. I'm going, yeah,
Huh.
I'm using this plan. This is great. So uh, yeah, I'm pretty enthusiastic about that.
Yeah.
It just feels so much better to be, for years I was spraying these. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with leafhoppers. I mean, we're talking
I've definitely worked with leafhoppers. Yeah.
we're talking about a critter that uh, it's only susceptible to some kind of spray before you can see them. You
Right.
know, you have to be out there with a magnifying glass looking at the leaves, and when you can see that the eggs are starting to get big, or you have nymphs crawling around, you nail them, because if you don't do it there and they start flying around, nothing kills them.
Right. Right.
And so, that was just brutal, trying to combat those without really, thinking in terms of, no, it's the health of the plant here. If I make these plants
Right.
stronger, as soon as I started spraying this stuff that we cooked up from Nicole Masters, man, everything got happy. And there was just like no leafhopper.
That's
And
incredible.
if I'd been spraying that a little more regularly, so they came back. I mean, and I was doing like the thinning out the first leaves on every cane, because that's where they're going to lay their eggs, because they're hopping around out of the grass as soon as the canes are, as soon as you're getting any growth on the plant.
Yeah. Yep.
It's,
That's
it's
amazing.
right. So yeah, there's a lot of things to do.
Have Now I've asked you about your winemaking. How's your farming evolved over those 50, 30 years period? Did you go organic at a certain point, or were you always organic? What was the
I was
journey
always
there?
working there. I'm a back to the land hippie.
Oh,
You
okay,
know,
great.
I've hated pesticides, and I was happy when they got lead out of gasoline.
Yeah.
I was um, in a solar uh, group in when Carter was in the administration. I've been
Yeah.
fighting fossil fuels all my life, I suppose. I live in an
Yeah.
underground house.
I
My
saw that. I was really jealous when I saw
my
that.
my winery is a straw bale building with stucco walls. It's a
This was
So
so
I worked at an alternative energy resource center for several years. I've
what's
been
y- what is your um annual rainfall where you are?
on a good year, 24 inches.
Oh, that's
This
not
year,
terrible.
10. You know,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, the weather here, especially lately, can change super dramatically.
Yeah.
So last year we had an open winter. I didn't plow snow at all.
Wow.
And that's like, I've been here 30 years. That was the first time I've ever seen that. The winter
Oof.
before that was a really heavy snow, and then it kind of defrosted early in the spring, and things started to go, and then it got down to 0 degrees.
Yeah.
Killed
Yeah.
everything. And a lot of
Yeah.
people, peaches and stuff just didn't happen. Cherries
Yep.
just didn't happen. Grapes happened, but not, grapes weren't out by then. They're a little slower coming. Or the year before that, I was picking grapes one day, and it snowed 12 inches the next.
Wow.
crushed my greenhouse. It's like,
Wow.
it still had the shade cloth on it. It kept all the snow. The weather can change dramatically.
Yeah. Amazing. No, I
It's,
ask just because of the underground thing. I think it works better in more arid climates. But I wanted to ask you about that. Did you build it yourself?
yeah, you can't get a contractor to build it. You can't get banks to finance it.
Right, right.
If you want to do something like that, you got to do it yourself.
So how'd you do it?
It's an arched construction.
Okay.
So concrete is strong in the compressive mode. It's not strong in the tensile mode. That's why you put iron rebar in it.
Yep.
So and lately they've been putting fiberglass in it, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
So it's
so
it's concrete. You poured a mold.
I made forms. I
Yeah.
made forms that were a complete Roman arch. And
Okay.
then I put some waterproofing on the arch, not because, well, just so that the concrete would release from it, basically. And then I had some chicken wire and 3 miles of rebar, structured around the arches. And then we gunite it. We shot the concrete onto it. And because
Right.
concrete is real heavy and it was not, these forms were just made out of 2x4s and plywood, we did it in 2 sets. So the first one we put an inch or so that stuck to that chicken wire. And then, after it would set up, then it was pretty strong and we went full blown and put in the rest of the 6 inches of concrete on it. I've had heavy equipment on top of my, it's, it,
And
the
is
neighbors
it
say, yeah, he lives in a bomb shelter. I don't have a big skylight. There's plenty of light in there.
is
And
it y- does it what's the word I'm looking for? Does it have windows on all
it has
directions?
windows
Or
on every opening. So it has windows on all 4 sides. And then there's 6 foot skylight at the top, which lets in tons of light. And in the summer, we have to put a sheet over it so it's not too bright inside.
that's funny. Yeah. That
Uh,
makes sense. That's
But
great.
yeah,
And
so
so
I got bushes. I think I've got a cherry tree growing on my house.
do
Lots
you
of
use
iris and snowberries and grasses of different kinds.
do you have to
When you find deer poop on top of your house, you've gone natural.
nice. That's amazing. Do you have to heat or cool it? Or is I mean
Well,
much
I wanted
less, I'm
I
sure.
wanted to do passive annual heat storage, and it does that to some extent. It really buffers it. I just have a huge thermal flywheel, so we're having 100-degree days here. It does get up to like 75 degrees inside, which feels super cool. Uh,
Right, right. When you come in from 100,
when
yeah.
you're used to 100 degrees outside. And we open it up at night so that when it does get cool, it cools off inside. And then in the winter, I still burn wood. When I got into this, I didn't know what a heat pump did.
Right.
If I was to go back at it, I'm looking at trying to get mini splits or something. Even in
Yeah.
my even in my cellar in my winery, I'd heat the floor with a water heater. It's just a resistance water heater.
Right.
Uh, and it's great because I put the carboys with the wine on the floor and it heats them from underneath and they love that. But and then this time of year I moved last year's carboys up to a table and put the new ones on the floor.
Right.
But if I had a heat pump way to heat the water in the tank and circulate it in the floor, that would be better. I mean,
Gotcha.
the ideal thing would be to have a big solar array powering my heat pumps,
Right. Yep.
but I don't have the finances for that right now. And I'll talk, I'm pretty much, my father was a bankruptcy attorney, and,
Okay.
and his advice was pretty much never go into debt. You know,
Yeah.
and
I like
so
that advice.
And so
Yeah.
I kind of avoided that, but I think if I can, there are some outfits out there that will, finance all of these heat saving upgrades. And
Yeah.
if I had some extra time, I would delve into those.
That's great. Well, what did we miss talking about? I want to make sure I
That sounds like
get you to.
John's last question. Yeah. What did we not talk about? Um, um,
I mean, there's a lot I could ask you. I just don't want to, I have to end this at some point. So I want to make sure that you say everything about the wine and anything that you're doing there that's
Here's
really
something we
important
haven't
to you.
talked about.
Yeah.
I wash all my own bottles.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I asked people, when I saw bring back the bottle. So on my sign at the market, it says, bring back my bottles to me, to me. You know, uh, I have 4,000 bottles.
Okay.
A local winery, they have a tasting room, and so they have their own bottles. Those are really nice. And they brought me, several pallets of those. And so I have a lot of bottles, and I try to sort them in such a way that I can bottle my wine in more or less the same looking kind of bottle. So
Right.
I'll have a brown hock for Riesling. I'll have a big, I call them BS green Bordeaux. A lot of wine bottles come with broad shoulders and then a deep indent in the bottom. Makes them look
Right.
like they have more wine in them. So the
Right.
BS could stand for broad shoulders or just for bullshit, you know.
Right.
So, I have them sorted out that way. And then when I go to bottle a carboy, I'll wash up a bunch of bottles using the hardest thing is to get the labels off. I use the citrus solve. So, at first, hot water will soften it up enough so you can use like a window cleaning single blade razor
Right.
to get the labels off. And then I will go back and use a scrubby to put citrus solve on there, and it'll take the gum right off almost anything. And then I have to, because it's kind of an oil, I go in with another home solve, sort of seventh generation soap that takes the oil off, and
Okay.
then I wash them with scalding hot water. So I crank up
Right.
my water heater to 180.
Whoa.
Then I put them, I invert them and squirt water into them for long enough so that they're just about too hot to touch,
Right.
and then I'm ready to bottle. So that's a lot of work. That's work that your ordinary sane person is not going to be doing. But
Well,
I'm
I was
like,
going to say.
uh, you know, a lot of energy goes into melting sand and making this glass.
Yeah.
And then out here in the country, they're not recycling this glass into more glass. They're recycling this glass into concrete. They just chip
Yeah.
it up, use it for fill and something. So I'm like, no, this bottle will last 100 years. You just have to wash it every once in a while. And
Right.
so I wash my own bottles. It's just the ecological thing to do.
So it doesn't it waste a lot of water? Not waste. I mean, obviously, like depends on how you define waste, but like, are you concerned about the water use?
No, so here's a typical thing. I got a 40-gallon stainless steel vat that I fill up with super hot water,
Okay.
and I soak all the bottles in there. And then I get off the labels, and then I use the same water to wash those other labels, the gum up from the labels off.
Uh-huh.
And so that's 40 gallons for 36 bottles. It's really not that much water. I mean, believe
40
me, if
gallons.
anybody's going to be pinchy about water, it's
Wait,
me.
40 gallons for 36 cases of bottles, you mean? Or
No,
36
36
bottles?
bottles, three
Okay,
cases.
okay. 40 gallons. That seems like a lot. Isn't that a lot?
If you're washing a lot of bottles, man.
So wait, that 40 gallons also is what you spray the inside with as well.
No, I use super clean fresh water
Oh,
for that.
gotcha. Okay. Got it. All right.
So, but that doesn't, it takes 45 seconds or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like it wouldn't be enough to even fill up one of those bottles.
Right.
So, you know, maybe it's 5 times as much water as you would use to fill up those bottles, but that's really not that much.
Yeah.
It's, I
No, I
mean,
mean
we're
I
talking 10 gallons a minute. That's 4 minutes worth of water. You know?
Right. Right, right. Yeah, good point. What where does that water go when you with your winery water, that kind of stuff? I mean, I don't know if you have a winery wine. Well, you do have a winery. You have a straw bale winery.
Yeah,
What
I put a hose
yeah.
in it and siphon it out of my vat onto the ground mostly.
Oh, okay. Got it.
We're talking blow sand. It sinks down into the ground. It's gone like that. You know?
Yeah.
Nothing
Okay,
happens
I
with water.
wanted to ask you about the blow sand. How do you get the nutrition into your vines that they need in blow sand? Like,
Um,
yeah. Are
and
you
I don't really add stuff to it. I have like this last winter, a guy traded me, and I got like several big pickup loads of 3-year-old horse manure,
okay? Yeah.
and I put that around every vine.
Okay.
I make compost, so I have big apple bins full of compost that I add stuff to. I use 30-year-old sawdust from a local lumber mill, and then I mix that in with a lot of green stuff and vegetables and other things to make a good compost. And it's not, it would be cool to do like a Johnson Sioux compost thing.
Yeah.
And I think I might try that. But I put worms in there. And
Yeah.
so then the advantage of using those bins and having the compost in the bins is that it never freezes at the bottom of the bins. They're
Right.
just sitting on the ground, and they get somewhat aerated because those apple bins, at least the old ones, breathe. Uh,
Right.
and so uh, it works pretty good. It makes pretty good compost, and I put that out there too. And then I try to reincorporate the skins and stuff. A guy makes grappa out of my must, and
That's
I
great.
do free run.
Oh.
I do have a press. I have a bladder press
Uh-huh.
that I've been using a little bit more lately. But by doing free run, I can I can do the 4 minute, and then all of the seeds go to the bottom of the vat, and eventually I let the skins rise to the top, and then I have a tap at the bottom. I used to use a siphon, and then I just tap it into my carboys. Uh,
Huh.
and when it stops, when it stops running freely there, I have some kind of soggy stems on top of a bunch of seeds, and he takes that and makes grappa out of it.
That's
But
amazing.
by doing that, because I've done it the other way, I've pressed it
Yeah.
and like that. But if you do free run, you don't get dregs. I have like a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, or sometimes, full blown, and maybe a 1/2 an inch of dregs at the bottom of the carboy. I put it in that
Really?
carboy, and I put a fermentation lock on it, a vapor lock on it. I don't open it for 3 years. I don't
Huh.
taste. I don't do anything with it. And when I
Yeah.
go to bottle, I put it up on a table. I put my siphon tube in there, and I have a little wire that I stick in the bottom of the tube that keeps it off of the bottom of the carboy a little bit,
Right.
and I just drain it into my bottles. It's
That's
it's
amazing.
so straightforward. I'm like, I've got one tube to clean. I run my 180-degree water through my tube. It's clean. There goes my whole system. It's clean. You know, I rinse out my carboy, and if there's
Yeah.
something stuck in there, I use a bottle brush and some hot water, and if things get desperate, baking soda. But it's
Right.
you know, it's so simple and straightforward and easy to clean, and organic and sanitary and cheap. You know
So
that
are all of your wines sitting for that long before you bottle? 3 years?
I just keep my eye on. So I always use S vapor locks. I never
Okay.
use those bubbler ones.
Right.
Because I learned
Okay.
the hard way. I used to have the bubblers because that's what they sell you in a wine shop.
Okay.
And if the temperature changes in where you're fermenting your wine from
Uh-huh.
kind of like 70 or whatever you want it at, and goes down to 40 or something cold, first thing it does, it sucks all the water out of those bubblers. All of the
Okay.
junky water that's been exposed to the air, whatever it is, it sucks it right into your wine, breaks the
Right.
vapor lock before you even know it, and spoils the wine like overnight. I hate bubblers. I always
Yeah.
use S locks because they'll keep that vapor lock down to just a tiny bit of water. You know,
Okay.
it's so
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
easier to maintain, and you can visually see it, and so they're a little harder to clean. So some of them don't look exactly clean, but they work just fine. I much prefer the S lock because I just
Okay.
ruined too much hard work trying to make wine on those bubblers.
Okay. Huh.
Uh, so it's everything I do is pretty simple, really, if you think about
Yeah. Yeah. So,
it.
but I mean, you just keep an eye on it, but 3 years is not unusual for your wines?
No, let's see. Let me go and check on what I got scheduled for bottle. Pretty much everything I'm going to bottle next is a 2022.
Wow.
And
All
I just
right.
finished, that's because I just finished bottling my 2021.
And we're in, wow. Um, I mean, so you're in glass, so things are changing a lot slower, right? Is that part of it, do you think, why you're taking that long? Or if you were in an oak barrel, would you leave them that long?
no, in an oak barrel, it's breathing.
Yeah,
It's
right.
losing, the angel's share and the devil's share and all of that. And you're, if you let that go for very long, or it gets hot or cold or wet or dry, you're screwed. So you got all
Right.
that money into this big barrel. Um, these carboys, they're pretty bomb proof in terms of not the wine not spoiling. As long as you got the vapor lock working, they're happy just sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a giant bottle of wine, basically.
Yeah, it's like a giant bottle of wine. Exactly.
um,
And it's a good idea not to have the temperature going up and down. It doesn't really go up and down very much in my winery,
right.
but
That's
it's
good.
not rock solid like you would need if you had bubblers all the way.
Yeah,
What's really cool,
barrels. I
I
mean,
mean, I
yeah.
visited my grandfather's town, Castelbono in Sicily, and this distant cousin of mine took us on a tour of the Anastasia winery there that he'd helped build some of the equipment for. And they had 500-gallon oak barrels with a vapor lock at the top. And I couldn't figure it out at first. It's not like the ones we use. It was glass. It was hand blown glass,
Okay.
and it had like wine in it. And then it had another level to it. But what it was showing was, as long as the wine was in this thing that's on top of this barrel, the that means that the level of the wine in that barrel is up to that point. So
Right.
it's not only acting as a vapor lock, it's acting as an indication of what's going on in the barrel.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh, but I totally don't need that.
But you're not doing 500-gallon barrels worth of wine, it sounds like.
No, no, no. So to tell the truth, my cousin, I think he was a lot more closely associated with the mafia than his neighbors. And I don't know if you've ever been to a winery like this. We go down there, and I said, well, since we're here, let's fill up this 5-gallon thing he brought in. And they have this thing that looks exactly like a gasoline hose, with a little handle that
Yeah.
sticks it in the 5-gallon deal, fills it up with wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is the way they do it back in the old land.
Well, I mean, now that's if you're in a big winery, you use a little hose like that that's nitrogen forced, forced nitrogen causes, it's like a little keg that you carry around, you carry your keg of
Oh,
wine
right.
and yeah, you've got a little hose
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
people will always give them, things to vacuum seal the top of the wine, and things, put Aragon in there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I never found that it made any difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up drinking most of the bottles that don't fill up at the end of the run. So where you got 3/4 of a bottle, and you put a cork or a stopper on it, and drink that, and it'll sit on the floor of the kitchen for a couple of weeks, till I get the wine drunk. It's not in a refrigerator. It doesn't have any gas on it. It doesn't change flavor. It's been sitting there for 3 years. It's not going to change much flavor. It,
And
it's
you did,
these sulfites and all this crap they put in the wine that you have to breathe out of there. Um, and I suppose if I had a lot more phenols and, we're crushing seeds or doing something to rack up the tannins higher and needed to have that all, mellow out and age, I appreciate that kind of winemaking. It's cool to have it aged out, and I've tasted a lot of wines that had all those things going on in there, but it's totally unnecessary in my book.
yeah. That's amazing. I love that. I mean, that you not just only fermenting free run is almost saves you, I don't know, thousands of dollars of buying a press and a lot of cleaning and hassle.
Well, yeah, I have the press. It's just that
Right, right. I
it,
mean, you
if
have
I
one. You,
pressed it, and then it's going to build up a couple inches of alum and dregs at the bottom, then I have to rack it and I have to fill it up from somewhere else. That involves a lot more exposure to things that could screw it up, a lot more exposure to air, a lot more things to clean, a lot more stuff to do. Um,
right.
at some point, I just said, just screw this. I'm just going to free run and bottle it when it's ready.
Well, what about whites? How do you handle those? Those you
They
press
get, they
sweet.
get. I don't usually like a lot. Have a lot of Sagreba, and let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at bottle Sagreba 2023.
Okay.
Super popular. So what? That's only a couple of years, and I'm not running up the bricks in those. It makes a really nice, refreshing wine at 20 bricks or 22 or 19. Just depending on how
Yeah.
much white you want.
And
So
I mean, do
yeah,
you
the
have to
whites don't. I
do you
don't
use the
age the
press for
whites yet.
those?
Hmm?
Do you use the press for that? For the whites when you're processing the grapes? How do you get the how do you ferment them?
Um, Same as the reds, really.
No, just crush it and
But I crush it and throw in some hardworking yeast or starter from another batch of wine. So once I get going at the beginning of the season, I've always got a ready bunch of must that I can take from one batch and put into the next.
and you're fermenting on skins with the whites?
Yes. So what
Oh.
do they call that? Orange. So these
Yeah.
are not, this is not the crush the hell out of it and bottle it as soon as possible. No, my whites are all yellow.
Amazing.
uh, I just don't, I only ferment them on the skins for 2 or 3 days, and but I feel like they need that. They need the flavor from those skins. They need the seeds. They need, I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to divorce the juice from the rest of it. Like I'm out there testing bricks. So to test bricks, I grab a bunch of grapes from on down the row and put them into a little jar or shot glass or something and crush them up. And if you pour that onto your refractometer, you'll get one reading. Say you'll get a reading of 25 or something.
Yeah.
But if you take the skins and eat those that are in that same jar, or if you pour that liquid out into something and taste it, you're tasting what's registering at 25.
Right.
But if you taste the skins, they've got all the acid in there. They've got a lot of stuff going on in there, and they're not at 25. They're much
R-
lower. So for years, I was like, how come I go out there and test all this bricks and it says it's 25 and then I crush it and it comes out 22? I'm like, what's going on here? It's the skins, when I'm measuring the bricks. So the skins have all of this flavor and they change the sweetness of the wine quite a bit. So I want that in there.
Huh. I love that. I also find that, the nutrition in the skins and seeds helps the fermentation be healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
Conduct. It's like when you
I
remove it, you
never
get
have
these sort
stuck
of
fermentations. I don't, when I first started making wine and they had all these nutrient things that you could put in there to make sure that your wine didn't get stuck.
right,
Now that I'm making grape wine the way I do, it never gets stuck. You know,
right, right. Yep, I love that. Well, great. I mean, I could, like I said, I could keep asking you questions, but but I really appreciate you sharing all this already. This is great. It's fun. Do you have any animals there besides your cat that they're like on the land?
And then, no, I wish I did.
Yeah.
I think even just chickens. But one year I was able to get sheep run into my vineyard for a little while.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
it turned out to be, too few sheep and not in there long enough. But
Right.
we have bears and cougars running around here, and the guys with sheep are pretty paranoid about uh,
Right.
having the predators get a hold of their sheep, especially in some new place they're not really familiar with. So,
Right.
uh, and no, we have people that run sheep like wild herders in the national forest, and they don't totally run sheep; they run yaks. Sometimes they have camels.
Huh.
This is there are some pretty back to the. I mean, these are further back than back to the land. These guys are really, they make their own clothes out of tanning hides and stuff. Right?
Wow.
The primitive skills group is they have these sheep because you can live off of sheep. We're talking about guys that keep chickens in cages while they're going through the national forest herding their sheep.
Wow.
They can have eggs or fresh
Wow.
meat. It's, so getting those guys to run their sheep in because you only need those. The perfect thing about sheep is if you run them in there when the grass is really green, then you're not just mowing it and hoping some of that nitrogen gets into the ground. They're running it through their digestive system, and you're getting fertilizer immediately uh,
Yeah, you're getting all that
underneath your vine.
microbiology. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would love to have sheep, but I only need them for one graze or two, and then you have to feed them for the rest of the year. Like
Yep.
this doesn't really work out for me. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm not running sheep, and it'd be nice to run chickens too. I've had chickens. I call chickens a predator magnet. you know,
Oh yeah.
yeah, lots of things get into your chicken coop.
Yeah.
You got skunks and coyotes, you name it, it'll get after your chickens. Uh,
Voles?
well, they'll just get in there and eat shells, eat
Oh,
eggs,
gotcha.
stuff
Eat
like
the
that.
eggs. Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of critters around.
Yeah.
Last night, one of our cats killed a flying squirrel that was eating nuts off of our nut tree,
Oh
and got
no.
what was left of the body and threw it on my wife's bed. She was totally freaked this morning.
Oh, that was so sweet of them.
Yes, they're just feeding the pride, but no thanks. Gracie. Just keep that stuff away from here. So
Yeah. Oh
there,
gosh.
it's a little bit too wild. I worked out a bunch of that fertilizer stuff. I make the foliar spray with the fish emulsion and stuff in it, and a bear got into it and knocked it over. So I had
Oh
to
yeah.
start over again.
Yeah. I just heard I had a friend who used a fish emulsion fertilizer and then spread this composted soil all over their flower bed and couldn't keep the raccoons from digging up every single flower because they were looking for the fish.
Right, right. No,
Uh,
raccoons are another great predator.
yeah.
Luckily, we have raccoons, but they're not that persistent around here. Between the cat and the dog, I get a little bit of what I think is predation from raccoons. They're kind of cute. I don't care.
Yeah. And smart and cat like. Yeah. Um well great. I will well thank you, Joe. I appreciate this conversation. It's it's really fun to talk and hear what you're doing. So many good things. It sounds like you don't fly, right? Don't want to use the fossil fuels?
Yeah, I mean, we flew over to Sicily in 2010 with my dad paying for the pretty much, you are the place you live.
Yeah.
Everything you need is right here. You
Yeah.
know, People that have to fly around and get experiences and get vacations that they're not living right. They're living someplace. They're doing things that they don't like for somebody else. You know, for and using stuff that they don't really think about or appreciate.
Yeah.
It's messed up that
Yeah.
the whole vacation tourism, so as being involved with all these museums and this bicentennial, there's a lot of pressure I'm out there once in a while making, people are filming me talking to people for videos to encourage tourism to the area. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of wishy-washy about tourism. I mean, I live next to this lake, and I don't like big houseboats with a swarm of jet skis and crap zooming around the lake. It's really kind of a nightmare in the summer when those people come out. So I'm not really keen on tourists.
Yeah, I remember having that realization in my 20s where I think I was in Europe and I was like, this is, like this is somebody's home. Like I could just go back to my home and make my home a really awesome place and then it would be the same thing. Like why not all the
Right,
energy and
right,
resources that I'm spending to get away from my home, I could spend on making my home beautiful and culturally rich and full
right.
of the things that I come here to see,
So
and taste.
Spain and Copenhagen and stuff are going, we've had it, or Venice, no more weddings in Venice. You guys get the hell
Oh
out of here.
God,
No
seriously.
more cruise ships in the Caribbean. This is an insane culture.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, thanks again. I'm gonna stop recording so that we can go about our lives, but we can. Well, I'm sure. Let's keep talking.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you joining in to these podcasts. If you'd like to support these podcasts, probably the best way to do that is to just join Substack as a paid subscriber at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. It also gives you access to all the paid episodes and other content that I will be releasing on Substack. And I also want to thank Cold and Pro for this beautiful closing music.